Could you confirm for us, like what of Neustar's products are you using currently?
So we do, I guess they're Ultra DNS products, so they're our main DNS host provider right now. And then they are also our backup DNS provider, which we're actually standing up right now because the basically the technical connections fell through. So there's a gap basically there that we're trying to fix and remediate between our two network teams. And then there's also, I guess, their flow-based, I don't know what their official name for it is, but it's their flow-based monitoring alerts where they basically alert us if something is outside of a certain percentage of our normal bandwidth.
Yep. Got it. Yeah, makes sense. So were you, and what's your title, Carl? Sorry.
Oh gosh, so what we call ourselves is cyber research strategist because that's our old title. Our new title is, hold on, I got to look this up here because I can never remember. We call ourselves SLRCs now, which is terrible. It is Senior Lead Cybersecurity Research Consultant.
Okay, that's a lot.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah,
it is a terrible thing. So that's why we call ourselves SLRCs, or we just go by our own titles. Yeah.
Fair enough. Got it. And how long have you been a customer of Neustar? Do you remember?
Oh, it's been years.
Years? Okay.
Yeah, but I've just been engaged in it, I would say, within the last 10 months maybe or something like that. Okay. There was another person, in all honesty here, there was another person was responsible for DDoS here in a small team. Yeah. They went away, and then it came into our laps, and we found out that there was some major gaps, one of them being that Neustar was not connected anymore. We're like, oh, okay, cool.
That's a bit of a challenging moment that you have to solve immediately. Like, welcome to your new part of your organization. Yeah.
I was like, how do I explain this one up the chain? It was a good time.
There's always that you can blame the person that's gone. So I'm going to ask questions that relate to the process of making a decision like this. And I'm just going to ask you to, because you weren't there when they decided to bring on Neustar. Mm-hmm. So think about, if you don't mind, if you were searching for a new product today, like what would that look like when it comes to asking these questions? Okay. And so kind of the first step would be what would trigger a purchase like this for your organization? What makes you sit back and say, oh gosh, we need to seek a partner to solve this?
I mean, besides switching away from my current product to my current other offering, it would basically be pain points that I'm having with them, this is actually really honest and truthful, is pain points that we're having with our current provider and wanting to basically, it's like a painful relationship that anybody has in life. And eventually at some point you think about, disintegrating or breaking up that relationship. So that is, current providers not meeting our needs, pain points with them, lack of communication, lack of tooling, understanding. Neustar has a better tooling set basically, and alert response, and a whole bunch, their interface is just better. Their teams also seems to be better from a support standpoint as well too. Yeah. And those are things that, if you kind of want to reverse that, I guess that's what I'm looking for in things here. I'm looking for good support, good communication, and good tooling. And if my needs aren't being met there, we're going to start looking. Also cost, obviously too.
Yeah. In that order, interface, support, and cost?
I would say the most important thing is probably detection of attacks for us, because that is a problem that we continually run into with our current tool set.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. So when you start looking for a solution, or when you start, where do you start that process?
I mean, it's Google.
Yeah.
You start Googling around, start looking for, top DDoS providers, you start basically looking for all this stuff that basically Neustar provides. You start Googling around and, consolidating information. Sometimes I look at Gartner, but usually not, because usually I just don't trust them or agree with a lot of their stuff here. Maybe half the time I do. It's not there. But yeah, I'm looking for that. I'm talking to my other friends, I guess, too, because a lot of us are in security.
Is there a buying committee, or what would be the next steps if you were? Okay.
No, yeah, it's just, again, it goes up the chain to my boss and then eventually to the CIO, but it's usually pretty much already signed off on that.
Okay. Do you guys have a formal RFI or RFP process or anything like that, or is it fairly just No.
It's
Okay,
a
so it's
pre-
not labor
yeah.
intensive.
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in terms of how you learn about things and what's important to you, what types of content do you engage with? What kind of value would you put on things like a data sheet or a white paper or a demo? What types of things help you with your decisions?
Personally, for me, it's
Yeah.
actually very little. A lot of it's just word of mouth between
Okay.
colleagues that don't work here.
Okay. So a lot of you rely on your network for referral.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do you think that's typical of like the folks that refer for you? Do you think they operate the same way? Like, do you think referral has more value than say some other things?
I don't know. I'm pretty social for my jobs. Well, I don't know if that's
You're
the
a social
case.
engineer.
I'm pretty social
Good.
in where I'm at. So I don't know how much they rely on their again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just say no one ever comes to me and asks me about solutions. So I'd say
All right.
probably very little, unless they just don't rely on me, which could be.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yes, Newstar's functionality and ease of use is a lot better than GoDaddy,
Sure.
but GoDaddy's for a single, again, a single
Right.
domain. We have 52. We probably have over 52 domains in there. I have 52 active emailable domains that I have to update. Whereas there they had
Oh,
like
wow.
8, and it was pulling teeth to try to go from one to the other to the other.
Difficult thing ever how to pronounce this company, but apart from that, I was quite happy.
Okay,
So I
okay,
was working with them for 12 years before that, so I know them quite well.
okay. Worked with them for 12 years. Okay. And that was at a company called
Entain.
now with your new organization, and that is what happens that makes you start to look for a partner like Newstar? So taking Newstar out of it, like what's going on in your organization that says, I've got this problem. What is the problem, and how do you go about looking for solutions?
So right now it's you have many different sites worldwide, and you just want to have one partner to work with. Right now, if you take, for example, Ultra DDoS, you have for example, now, let's say a GTD link, a Lumen link, whatsoever, and all those companies are reselling their DDoS products. But you are then in charge to make sure that you keep in line all those configurations with different providers, which then in turn maybe use different products in the backend. So you can never make sure that it works on the one link, and then you need to switch over for whatever reason to the other, and you attack then on the backup link, for example, then you can never be sure that the same configuration is applied DDoS-wise. So that's why I like to have a central service at top to make sure that this is just consistent. You have one partner to work with. You have no blaming between different companies, and you know how that goes normally.
I do, absolutely. It makes your day easier too. Like you're just talking to one person in one conversation and not multiple different interpretations of.
So
right.
back then so if you keep with the Ultra DDoS example, we then did a tender with multiple companies. I think back then, when did we start that? I think it was 2018, I would guess, something like that, maybe 17. I can't recall perfectly now. But in the end, we then ended up with 3 companies that we've been tendering. That was then Akamai, which had the Prolexic service result. Then we had Link11, which was a smaller German company, but looked quite interesting, and it was Neustar. And from those 3, we then had the feeling that for Akamai, even Entain with the 27,000 employees, we would just be a small customer of theirs, and not really getting the attention that we might need in case something goes wrong. On the other hand, Link11 was too small to support our global footprint, and Newstar was exactly the thing in the middle, right? So we've been already an Ultra DNS customer back then, so adding the Ultra DDoS service made a lot of sense, because then we've been getting to a level that we even got to know their C-level, so we've been a really important customer. If anything goes wrong, we could escalate back up there and get the right attention to get things fixed as we needed them. We have been placed in a permanent Slack group with the senior engineers in case we needed any changes. There was no complex call customer service and wait for a random amount of time till somebody is willing to listen to you, kind of thing. So we just pasted in an ongoing Slack chat, and whoever was available picked up our request. So I think that combination made it really a good service for us.
So I've got a generic title of a network engineer, and it's split into probably about six subsections, each with about 6 people in each one. So firewalls, load balancing, CDN, routers, switches, they all have a little group. So there's probably about 36 people in like a loosely called a network routing and switching and security team, I guess.
Okay. And that's all on the DDoS side, all on the you're managing DNS as well, or just the DDoS side?
I do DNS certificates and CDNs.
Okay. Okay. And then were you
and the WAF security, which obviously is
and
where
WAF. Okay.
the DDoS comes into.
Okay. Very good.
It's mainly Akamai I use, so.
Okay. So were you there when you chose the Neustar solutions?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I've been here 34 years.
Oh my. Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So, and I'm assuming there's been upgrades or downgrades. I'm assuming over those years you've been there, it isn't just the same exact product, right? There's been some changes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit, if you can remember back, we like to ask customers about how they research solutions. So I was just curious how you, with this, especially the size company you're at, what kind of, what do you look at when you're trying to identify a short list of vendors?
I guess Gartner has to be the Gartner and Forrester has to be the key places to go to at least get a start.
Okay.
And then after that, it's obviously just normal research, looking at reviews, trying to get information from client customers that are sort of referrals from client customers. But I guess the first point of call has to be really Gartner and Forrester, really.
Okay, so you do use them, and you value the data or the reviews. You actually, even today, or even 10 years ago, and even today.
Yeah, I mean, we started looking at Neustar in like 2003, so the decision making process was a lot different then than it is now.
What is it about Neustar that makes you stay?
Reputation, I guess.
Okay.
Reputation and client base, and also personal experience. You have to look at client base if other big organizations are using them, they're using them for a reason. And I guess reputation, we've never had any issues using them. We've been using them, as I say, for probably about 15 years. We would why would you ever, for something that's key to your business, why would you ever change?
Right. So you've had good experience.
You'd only ever change if it was hugely expensive or it was completely unreliable. If it was good value for money and doing a very good job, I would see no reason to even look elsewhere, if I'm honest.
Okay, well, good.
Account manager.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it, as you say, and I mean the one. It's almost like a good and a bad thing with Neustar is that it just works, and so from an internal point of view, it's always actually been quite hard to market because in a funny way, if you have issues with a company and they resolve it, they're almost like they're quite high profile, where Neustar just sits in the background doing its job, working, and no one ever seems to know about it apart from me.
Right. I know, isn't that funny? I know a couple of our internal calls have been about that too, that you're selling a security blanket that you don't know is there until you hear from colleagues there's attacks going on and you're clean, right?
Yeah, and I guess, as a sort of sideline, one of the things I've always said to them is, maybe you should be more proactive with pushing the amount of attacks you've stopped. You don't have to mention customers. There's no reason why you can't say, do you know what, this month we had 200 attacks and we mitigated all of them, you know, no customer impacts or whatever. At least you've got something.
Yeah, we had some feedback from some other customers too, that, you know, people want to be wowed and go to a SOC and see a screen with a bunch of attacks being mitigated, and, you know, it's almost like television, right? Like you want to know that's happening.
Absolutely.
And it is happening.
Yeah.
So how often do you get sales calls from vendors trying to steal your business from Neustar? Does it happen a lot, infrequently? Like, how do you think that you get barraged by people trying to steal the business?
Infrequently, I think, because again, there's only really, you know, probably like 3 or 4 companies that are capable. You've probably got Cloudflare, NS1, Akamai. Outside of that, there's not really that many. We have an ongoing business with Akamai. We use those for our CDN, and they know that our DNS is with Neustar, and we're going to happily stick with those. Right. NS1 and Cloudflare, I don't see as being anywhere near as good as Neustar yet. They could well be in the future. They may be well worth looking at in years to come, but at the moment, I don't see them being up to the same level. So
exactly. So tell me a little bit about your DNS purchase. Let's switch topics a little bit. The DNS2, is that something that you saw some content or marketing about and asked, or is that something the account manager presented for redundant DNS? Like, can you tell me about that at all?
I think a lot of that came from us. For years, we've been saying we need something along those lines, and so it's something we've been looking at for a number of years. I wouldn't have thought we influenced them in any way, but
maybe you did.
So but who knows? But it's always been a constant conversation, you know, for what we can do. And so when we then eventually asked, and they said, "Oh, do you know what? We've got this product on the horizon." That was obviously when we started engaging a bit further.
Okay.
And it wasn't, and I have to say, it wasn't an easy sell internally. Mainly because it's very hard. Well, we found it very hard to sort of say, right, so your primary is with Neustar, yeah, and your secondary is with Neustar, and it's like, yeah. So you've got all your eggs in the Neustar basket, and it's like, well, if you look at it that way, yeah. So it wasn't an easy sell. I mean, one of the things that we did manage to convince Neustar to do was to go for an internal audit, because that was the only way we could ever see us resolving that, to say you need to come up with some independent document that states that your infrastructure is completely separate, completely isolated, and works independently, which is what they did. And I think ultimately that was the clincher internally of how we managed to persuade people that was the better solution.
On the DNS2 topic, can you tell us a little about the approval process? Like you said, it was a little difficult at first to sell, you know, so you had to explain the audit. That's a separate redundant system. How does it work at your place? Is it fairly flat where it's just you and maybe one level to sign the check? Like, tell us a little bit about the buying committee or the process.
So I'm right down at the bottom. I'm the bottom of the log pile. So I just give my.
I doubt that, but
no, it's very true. I give my view on what I think we should do technically. That then goes to my manager. He then discusses it with his manager. It then goes to an architectural forum where all the various architects from all aspects of IT then have a chat, and then that gets referred to the sort of director of IT. So it's very unflat.
Okay, it's not flat at all.
Absolutely.
Has it always been that layered since you've been there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It keeps people in jobs, for heaven's sake. Oops, it's
being recorded,
exactly. Sorry.
Well, no one's gonna hear it. No one's gonna hear it from your place. No, not at all. Not at all. what would be, what do you remember what the timing was, like from the day you started looking at DNS2 to the day where you finally got a signature? Do you know how many months that was, or weeks?
It probably was about 3 or 4 months. I would say it was probably longer
Okay.
than we thought, because the original view was that we should do sort of an RFP, send it out to a number of customers. I think originally Akamai probably was going to be the forerunner, mainly because it wasn't Newstar, I guess, and there was a real desire from the IT director to use a completely separate company for resilience, because that understandably is the logical thing to do.
Right.
But I think what we realized was that within Newstar there's an awful lot of proprietary records that we couldn't easily copy over to Akamai. And then I guess on the minor side of using a different company for secondary DNS is you've got, on the minor side of that, you've got all the hassle of trying to work out how all your zone transfers work, how you can get around some of the proprietary DNS records like the site backer and the load balancing type records that Newstar has. And I guess on the flip side of that, if we looked at Newstar, all those issues disappeared. It's a single pane of glass. You make one change, it gets distributed to both platforms. And so I think it was just really a case of convincing people that the perceived risk of using the same company for primary and secondary was outweighed by the extra risk of putting two disparate systems in, getting them talking to each other, and the overhead that is created by that. So I guess it was sort of like a compromise decision, to be honest.
Okay, so a couple months.
I think if there was yeah, and I said, I think originally it was because
Tell me a little bit about kind of the triggers or the problems that you knew you needed to solve when you started thinking about finding a solution. What was going on in your organization that you said, I need to find a solution for this?
Sure. So there wasn't anything that was specifically going on within our organization at the time, but around 2013, 2014 was a time when there was a large wave of DDoS attacks against financial institutions. So kind of seeing that, and they were typically hitting larger institutions than ours, but kind of seeing that wave of attacks, we decided that we wanted to be proactive and get in front of the problem rather than be faced with outages. And we had one DOS attack against us several years before, but it wasn't anything significant. But that led us to start exploring, okay, who in the market has solutions that can protect us upstream of our own internet circuits, kind of take the stress off of those internet circuits and our resources, and certainly do it more competently than we could do ourselves, being a small shop. I think there were two of us at the time, myself and one engineer. So seeing that writing on the wall is what led us to seek out a provider that could protect us from DDoS.
So Giles, your staff was 2 back then. What kind of staff do you have today?
We're 5 today.
5 today. And can you tell us a little bit about what each one, like what does each one do? Is it mostly just network, or?
So no, we've got a completely different network services team. My team is focused solely on cybersecurity.
Okay.
We are somewhere around 720 to 730 employees.
Okay. Is that considered big for a credit union?
So we kind of size ourselves based on asset size. Okay. We hover around the top 50 in credit unions nationally. So we are one of the larger credit unions out there, but
Okay.
certainly there are much larger ones too. You know, when you start thinking of like a Navy Fed, who's the largest.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if Neustar, services, if Neustar Security was a good fit for your size business. It sounds like you're fairly large, so I would assume that from a budget standpoint, your size could afford their services.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks for that. Sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
No, sorry at all. It's a good conversation. Just a little bit more. When you started to look for, or if you were today looking for a solution, how does that journey begin for you? Where do you start looking for information?
So I'm trying to remember exactly how we found information back then. Like you said, it's hard to remember 9 years ago.
Yeah.
But I remember we went out there and looked for some of the better known providers in the space. I know we looked at Neustar. I know we looked at Akamai. I know we looked at Prolexic, I think, who is now owned by Akamai. But we looked at a number of the providers that were well recognized and larger providers in the space. Because when it comes down to DDoS and just exhaustive resources, it really becomes a lot of an arms race as far as who's got the greatest capabilities, largest data centers and scrubbing facilities. So we really started out looking for well-known large players in the space, like I said. And then we started to whittle things down by having initial discussions around capabilities. Mean time to respond, mean time to stop attacks, as well as the capacity of those scrubbing facilities, the amount of redundancy that was built into the platforms, et cetera. And then other capabilities that aren't necessarily around the size of a volumetric DDoS attack, but around application-based attacks. And really and truly, when it boiled down to it, we were able to make a pretty easy decision with Neustar based on discussions, demos, visiting their data center and SOC, and just had a strong feeling that Neustar would be a good partner for us should we ever need to invoke their capabilities.
Was most of your research, Giles, on the internet, or did you use certain websites or other resources? Like when you were looking, do you remember? Is it mostly internet search or other things?
Yeah, I think that's where we started. Doing research. We found the organizations, did research on information that was available on their websites, whether that was data sheets, product information, et cetera. That was really how we got the initial hold on things. And then
point of view, I think a lot of companies don't realize that when you're as big a company as us, some of these things just take time. Actually, the Neustar original contract probably took about 18 months, 2 years before we actually went from the original conversations to signing it. And I kept saying to the guys that if it happens, it probably will happen. It just takes time.
Yeah.
And there's so many other products and projects on the go, and so many other sort of spend that is required. It does just take time.
Yeah, and that's what we've found too, that everyone thinks you can close something in 30 days, and really it's 6 to 12 or 18 months, and it's just not when you work with a larger company. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, good. So I think we're at the end of our 30 minutes, Paul. I know Debbie was listening in as well. We tag team on these, so sometimes she's leading. But I really wanted to thank you for taking the time for sharing your input. It really does help us. We're really trying to improve customer experience. So thanks for taking I know it's late for you. And I think someone at Neustar will be.
I'm just about to do my gym session. So.
Oh, good for you. Okay, well, good. I wish I was doing that now.